Here we go. Hello, everyone. This is the Love Shepherd, Larry Michael, and you are on the Love Matters podcast. This is special, and you're probably getting tired of me saying this is a special interview, but you know, I don't want to do anything else unless they are special. But this one is very special to me personally because, gosh, 4 years ago, a friend of mine said, look at this little teeny book. And he gave me this book called Lucid Living that was touted as a book that you could read in an hour. And I have to tell you, I didn't really pull that off. And yes, you could. If you could definitely read it in an hour, but if you were to absorb it, you had to take longer. I took about a week to read a book that was, I don't know, less than 100 tiny little pages and not a lot of words for each page. But the words were monumental and transformative and just gripped me right where I knew I needed to be focusing and where I needed to belong. Now, who wrote this book? His name is Tim Freke. That's right. The last name is pronounced Freke. And I wanted to try it all other ways until I heard him acknowledge that that's the way it was pronounced. So he is a pioneering philosopher whose best-selling books, inspirational talks, life-changing events have touched hearts and minds of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. He's the author of 35 books and translated into 15 languages, a top 6 Amazon surprise bestseller, Daily Telegraph Book of the Year, his latest book, Deep Awake, and this one, Soul Story, which has been just wrapped around me for days. They are revolutionary approaches to awakening for the 21st century, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. It really is a visionary new understanding of the nature of reality. So this is going to be a mind-bending interview, and hopefully we'll be able to wrestle a lot of it to ground so you know what to do with it. Tim is also the creator of Unividualism. Unividualism. It's kind of a bit of a tongue. You got to train your tongue to do that. It's a deeper way of living. He's the founder of the international community of Unividuals. And he's been exploring spirituality and spontaneous awakening since he was 12. So Tim, welcome to the Love Matters podcast. I am so excited to have you on this show. I mean, literally, I became a groupie with Lucid Living years ago, and I don't do that very often with authors. And and I would tell people, go get this book, go get this book. And so I've read, on my desk, I have probably a dozen of your different books. I'm impressed. I'm challenged with a lot of them. I'm excited by the communication. I've found myself advancing my own kind of evolution as a result of some of your ideas. So I'm hugely grateful. I have some really crazy questions for you, though. You are, known as and I didn't say this in your bio, but you're kind of what's called a stand-up philosopher, which I think is fun. It's like, I'm supposed to go into a stand-up comedy show and see a philosopher there. What I'd love to ask you right from the get-go, and this may be an off-the-wall question, what qualifies someone as a philosopher, especially an international philosopher? I mean, we all have crazy ideas, right? We all philosophize and think we know things and make stuff up and challenge ourselves. But the AKA philosopher, how does that happen?
What a fantastic question. Well, I don't know the answer to that one, but I know why I use the word philosopher, Larry. I mean, partly that's because I studied philosophy and that's been my background at university when I was younger and all the rest of it. And partly because I feel like I have an attraction to the word. It's philosophia, that's love, wisdom. Philo's love, Sophia is wisdom. And my passion is love and wisdom. And there it is in this name. Now, because what I've been doing primarily, I would say, for the last 20 or so years, is introducing people to an experience of spiritual awakening, which is about waking up to love and then embodying it wisely. The natural thing for me to get called as a spiritual teacher, but I have a kind of an allergic reaction to the term because it gets associated so often with some sort of absolute claim to absolute authority. And that really worries me, because that, I think, is the opposite of what we need. What I like about the word philosopher is it doesn't have that. So hopefully we'll have a great conversation. I'll say some things which will be of interest to anyone who's listening, I hope. But because I'm just Tim, I'm just a philosopher, they can take what works for them and leave the rest. If I come in here with any sort of spiritual enlightenment spiel, it comes with this authority. And a large part of what I want to do is undercut any authority which stands outside ourselves. So each one of us can question for themselves. I was just today, I was looking at the Latin motto for the Royal Society, which was the society in the 17th century which started science in England. It changed the world. And their great breakthrough was which they encapsulated in their motto, was nihilus in verba, which basically means don't take anyone's word for it. Because up until then, we were just taking other people's word for it. And they came up with this, and that's what gave us science, and that's what gave us free thinking. And I feel very much I want to make spirituality part of that tradition. So I now think it sounds a bit like a Harry Potter thing. I think whenever you see an opinion, you can come up to it with your wand and go, nullius in verba, and just
oh my gosh, sounds like a good plan, actually. It's you just mentioned something that immediately got me asking the question. There's science, right? And the state don't take anyone's word for it, yet science wants you to take their word for it, right? Until they prove differently. and then there's all else. There's philosophy, there's spirituality, there's religious beliefs, there's all these where there's like people kind of want you to believe. They want to give you something that you can grasp your hands around and follow. And then at the same time, there's, for us individually, how do we get to that? How do we dance with the something that we want to grasp for certainty, and the don't take their word for it, kind of keep your mind open for exploration?
Well, one of the things I think which is essential for me is a type of thinking that I gave it a name because it didn't have one I could find. I called it paralogical thinking rather than logical thinking. It's an old idea, actually, but the essential idea is that you don't get stuck in either or, that you can see it's very often both and. So one of the great both ands for me is that I can be in a state where fundamentally I don't know what this is. I really don't. This is such that we are here, Larry, wherever here is, and whatever that means, experiencing this conscious experience and communicating in this realm we call psyche, which doesn't exist as matter, full of ideas, whatever they are. Or, it's so mysterious. So I'm rooted in this profound respect for mystery. And then from that, I want to develop the best possible story about what reality is, that can help me understand my life and the lives of others and offer to each other. And that's what I offer as a philosopher. And those two can sit together. So the openness, and I think that should be the root of science also. And all the great breakthroughs in science have come because of individuals who've had that approach, have gone, look, it's always, the mystery is bigger than any idea.
Yeah, if you think you've got it, look further, look deeper, right?
If you think you've got it, you haven't got it.
Beyond it, right?
Yeah, exactly right. But ideas are useful. Now, what happens, what you'll see often in dogmatic science or dogmatic religion is it's these ideas, and this is the truth. And that's, to me, it's like that's like eating the menu and missing the meal. It's like, no.
To me, it's like putting yourself in jail. You need to get out of jail card for that one. But.
Totally. And then the other side you get a lot in spirituality is the opposite, which is goes, oh no, look, all the mind, the work, that's all rubbish. The mind is a trap. It can't help you. You need to let go of all your ideas. And in my experience, people who don't think are not enlightened. They're stupid. So what we need is both, but to be caught in neither. So we can use this wonderful ability we have to frame concepts, which not only can help us understand life, but actually reveals more of life. I mean, I hope by the end of our conversation, we'll have said something to each other which will change my reality in some way, because it'll be a new, oh yeah, that's interesting. And then my life becomes richer for it, but the mystery is still there, and those two sit together. So that's
So
the foundation.
that is wonderful. And, what I'm hearing, I always use dance as a metaphor a lot because to me, it's just an exquisite way to move through our life. And, and there's a dance between science, between spirituality, between religion, and, between hard facts and those that aren't in that exploration process. And with all the environmental things that are going on and the speed that things are changing now, it's really complex to do that dance and do it in a healthy way. And I know that you've created, you do weekend retreats, you have a deep awakening process, which I want to hear more of. Was that kind of constructed to help people do a better dance, have a healthier dance, to find their way through it, so that, because my question is always like, what do we do with this information? How do I apply it? I'm going to get off this podcast, and has anything changed?
Yeah.
Or what could change that's going to be more beneficial to me as a result of what I learned, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. So the whole thing for me is about that. Yeah. And the dance metaphor is perfect for the paralogical. It's not one, it's not the other. Like a conversation is another metaphor, because it's we're passing this between us. It's the same. So there's this interaction, yin and yang. It goes back a long way. And so what I'm looking at is exactly that. So the two things which I explore in my Deep Awakening retreats is primarily experience. How can we change our actual perception of what reality is, and in such a way that we see it, we become what traditionally is called awake, which really just means that you're conscious of things you weren't conscious of before, in a very deep way.
So the short definition of deep awake is to become as consciously awake and aware as is possible in those moments.
You're really you're able to place your attention on the depths, if to use a spatial metaphor, the depths of your being. Normally we kind of live in a very narrow bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
And when an awakening happens, it does that, and suddenly you're out of that narrow bandwidth, and you've got a much deeper bandwidth. At which point, reality reveals itself to you in much more vividly, and you see things you didn't see before, and it fundamentally changes what you understand yourself to be and what you understand reality to be. So that's on the one hand, and then, like you said, it's like, well, then live your life. Whoa, how? And that's about wisdom. Now, the waking up, fundamentally, why I love the name of your podcast, is because I woke up for the first time when I was 12 years old, kind of happened by accident in a way. And what I discovered was love. What happens when the bandwidth does this is that whether you recognize it consciously or not, you see that everything is one, and that you are one with everything. You're an individual expression of something universal. You're an individual and a universal being at the same time. And that's all philosophy, because actually the experience is just, wow. That's the actual experience. You got this
when you were 12.
For the first time, yeah.
Were you able to verbalize the experience?
Well, it's funny. I guess, our natures are interesting, aren't they? Because I've always been very creative. And the very first thing I did was wrote a play, which is all about love coming from this experience. Because
at 12.
Yeah, and it was called The Wrong Way, and it was a surreal vision of history in which human beings have been doing things the wrong way, and had this kind of slightly hippie Jesus, I think, really, who would pop in and comment on it. We did it in a church, which was also theatre. We did it all with kids, with a company I'd set up, and the TV came. We filled it. We completely packed it out 3 or 4 or 5 nights in a row. It was quite a little, I live in a tiny little town. It was a huge deal. It was a huge deal also because I don't know why. There's always been part of me that's wanted to sort of wind things up a bit. And at that time, there was a whole, the troubles were happening in Northern Ireland. So the place in history it came through to eventually was Northern Ireland. And then we were kids. I wrote it with swearing, because in Northern Ireland people swear, and so it was swearing by kids in church. So you can imagine it was like, oh, what? So anyway, who knows? So yes, I did. And when I look at the end of that play, because my mum, who God bless her, she's dead now, but she kept the script for me in the mum box, the box that all mums have, and I discovered it, and it could have been from one of my books. It was kind of weird. It was like,
that's awesome. So so they filmed it. back in those days.
They didn't film it for the TV. It was with the wave. It was
It
too
was just
early.
broadcast. It was broadcast, but not.
They commentated on it.
Okay. Wouldn't that be a good YouTube piece today, right?
But I do have it recorded, I think, somewhere on a cassette.
Oh my gosh, you must find that.
I should.
It would be awesome.
But the point I wanted to make, Larry, was
the
experience then that I had when I was 12, and the experience which actually motivated the play wasn't the philosophy of oneness, and it was love. When you wake up to this oneness, when you experience the bandwidth shift, what you get is love. Like, oh my God, the whole universe is full of love. And then you're left with how do you live that? And that was your point, I think. And so this is perfect for me to express the idea, because if I look back at what I wrote when I was 12, the love bit was the same. What's changed, I hope, as I've matured over the last 50 years, is wisdom. My understanding has got deeper and deeper and deeper as I've challenged things and learned things and made mistakes. But the love that when I take people into the deep awake state, which I do with thousands of people, there's the love, huge, enormous love. You can't miss it. And then we need to find the wisdom, and that's developing every day. I'm trying to find that. Mm. And hence, going back to your first comment, that's why philosopher, love wisdom. I get it. And,
I have this belief system that as soon as you define love, it's not. And so, on the other side, there's this part of me that wants to say, okay, so define love for me. But I think
I can tell you how I'm using the word, because I think that's important. It seems to me, and that love is how oneness feels. That what the individual experiences when they come into a state of some sort of communion is love, and that happens on every level. So there's that connection with my daughter, which is a filial love, or with romantic love with my wife. That's also about a communion. And then as you go into these deeper states, there's the agape or the metta, or what I call the big love, which is this universal, all-embracing compassion. And yet compassion always ends a bit dry to me, because it's not dry. It's really embodied and felt, and it's very strong, I think, don't you? It's like, often love can sound like it's a little pink thing, like, oh, love, and I really like pink love, actually, but
it's for Valentine's Day, the pink love.
Exactly. And I'm up for all the pink love I can lay my hands on. Mm-hmm. But love is not just that; it's a whole spectrum, and love is the strongest thing I know. By far the strongest thing I know. It's deep and strong, so strong it can hold all the suffering. In fact, I think it's the only thing which can hold all the suffering. Nothing else can. It's that strong and see you through things. And so, but I think it comes from that sense that you're individual and you're not. That you feel a connection or a communion which reaches beyond the separate self.
So when you meet people that are, they're, enfolded in their being is all kinds of stress and challenges in every imaginable way of constraining, constricting, and almost aging them, right? But impacting their life. And so their connection to their heart, or to love, to big love, is as far away as you can imagine, almost. Is there a strategy? Is there a thought process? Is there a meditation that you would recommend that you take people to bring them into a sense, a deep feeling of love, so that they can reconnect with it?
Yeah. Obviously people do all sorts of things, some of which works for them and some which doesn't. But the thing which I play with, twofold. One, when I'm doing it from the bit that I can give from me, is my loving attention. It's like, if I can really give my loving attention to them, that's like a breath of fresh air. That's a chance that people can come out if they want to. The biggest thing that keeps people like that is fear. And people are frightened because the world is a very scary place. Mm-hmm. They're not irrational. They're not closed down. Being scared and armored is a natural response to a very scary world. So the first thing I want to go is, wow, of course you are. I get that. And nothing wrong with fear. I love my kids. And so I teach them fear. I want them to be frightened. Don't get in a car with a stranger, or,
Right.
don't go, fear's not bad. None of it's bad. So we have these things for a reason. So the first thing is like create a safe space in which someone can go, I don't need to be frightened here. And that's what I do on my events.
Mm.
And there's a line I wrote years ago, which I really liked, which just goes, every heart assured of safety opens instantly.
I like
That's been my experience. If I can create a safe enough space where people don't feel they have to do this, and I don't do it myself. And what I find with events, which astonishes me, is that usually within an hour, a couple of hours, if you go, this is a place where we can do this, the vast majority, not everyone, but nearly everyone just goes, okay, let's try it.
Yeah. So you create the safe space, right? You're truly listening. You've got the element of kindness and your own expression of love, right? So they get to go, okay, this could be all right, right? Yeah, my experience in that, it's really wonderful to watch people pop out. And the ones that are most resistant are oftentimes the ones that when it finally trips over have the most incredible breakthroughs, right?
Yeah. And the two things which I'll do, which I think are important in this experiential side to what I do is I want to go, for me, I don't want to see this kind of conflict spirituality anymore. And by which I mean, Christianity was all about the conflict between you and the devil. Now, Eastern spirituality has come in. It's all about the conflict between you and your own ego. There's some conflict. And my feeling is, look, there's not. There's an evolutionary process. And there's things in us from the past. And they can lift us up and they can pull us back. That's the nature of the past. And so it's habits. And they serve us or they don't. So what I want everyone to do right off from the bat is just go, look, be okay with yourself. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You couldn't be evolving if you were. So you made tons of mistakes. You'll make them again. That's okay. So have I. I can be a complete arsehole just like you. We're all like it. Right. Okay. Now we've got over that. Now let's see how we can open up to this deeper thing in ourselves and let the love in. Because the love matters because we're all kind of messed up and, life is hard.
We have work to do. Always, right? Yeah.
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 So I think that's key, is this to break down that. And then the other thing, which really is the centerpiece for me of the experiential side of what I do, is connection. So I'll jump the whole process. I don't jump people straight in. Well, sometimes I do, but I will build up to having, 20 years ago, I think I started getting people to gaze, and I've developed it into lots of different phases, and gazing is now everywhere. 20 years ago, everyone was like, my God, what? I got to look in someone's eyes, especially men.
For more than a second?
Another man. Yeah. And I'd get them for minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'll do eventually is I will get people gazing for 2-3 minutes with person after person after person in a totally beautiful atmosphere with lovely music, and it's a celebratory feel. And so the real answer to your question, which was such a good question, how do you help when someone's like this? The advice, what's the meditation? For me, it's like, well, if you can, the most powerful thing by far, in my experience, is actually connect with another being in this deep way. And when you do, you'll just do this. And at first you'll be thinking, oh, and then within minutes, certainly within 10 minutes, he just does this, and you're suddenly in this immersed beauty and connection. And it's the safest place you've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And the feeling of relief, and then the feeling of love is just tangible. You can't miss it.
So I'm going to ask what might seem like a really obvious question, but connection can get defined all kinds of ways. A connection, it's like intimacy. There's different levels of intimacy. Connection can be a handshake, right? Yeah. Or connection can be a deeply awake conscious exchange, right?
Yeah.
So how do they get from the handshake to that deeply awake conscious exchange?
Such a good question, Larry. That's fantastic. Yeah, because that's the key. So that's where the philosophy comes in. That's where it's like, okay, so use ideas to change how you perceive. So for instance, a lot of what I'll do, I really like the obvious because it can be so deep. So I'm aware that on the surface, we're having a conversation now. We're doing it online. I'm seeing an image of your face. If you were here, I actually see your face. And we're having this conversation about a topic which interests us. Mm-hmm. And that's true, and that's beautiful. But I'm also seeing that on a deeper level, what's happening here is that my psyche, my soul, psyche just means soul, my soul, which is you can't see, is connecting with your soul, which I can't see. So that something which you can't see is connecting with something you can't see right now. And this whole story of Tim, all these feelings and thoughts and memories and aspirations and all the hurt and which makes Tim Tim, is connecting with all of the same things, but in a different order, which makes Larry Larry. And on the surface, we can just look at our faces. They're amazing enough, but then we can connect soul to soul. We can actually make that conscious. That I'm connecting with something I can't see. And then once you've played with that, there's a deeper level where you start exploring the fact that, look, I am the universe. What else could I be? I'm a unique expression of the whole universe, and so are you. So there's a deeper level still where I can look in your eyes and go, oh, the universe is connecting with itself. The one is connecting with itself by being two. And when that opens up, then there's this just... So it's about exploring.
When we start exploring beyond the conversation, and there's so many steps getting out of the way of closing down a conversation, right? So kindness, curiosity, listening tools, and all those kind of things. Those sound like just beginning steps to actually making a soul connection, and then taking that one step further into the world now where you're talking to, I think we're going to step into unividualism in a second, aren't we? But now you're stepping in a world where are we one or are we two? Are we separate beings, or are we one being having separate experiences, or separate beings having one experience? Take us down that path a little bit, Tim, if you will, because I know that you've spent a lot of
very center of kind of deep spirituality forever probably has been the realization that you're not an individual, or you're not just an individual. So in the either or version, you're not an individual, you get rid of the individual. I'm not interested in that. I'm a both and thinker. To me, it's like, the universe has individuated into everything, including me. And then through me, the universe, what else could I be? I said again, where is this body, but also this soul, this psyche. And I'm experiencing reality from this perspective. And now I'm meeting you, and you are also a body and a psyche, soul, and you're experiencing it from that perspective, both physically, where you're situated, but also in the way you think, in the way you imagine, in the way your soul works. And that we're communing on all of those levels at once. But also we are the universe doing that. And the jump happens when you see that. That's the deep awakening. It's when you suddenly go, oh, I'm the whole thing. And you get the experience of that, and then the love, because love is how the oneness feels.
So it sounds like you're going from, there's me, and then, there's us, kind of. Is it like that?
Yes, yeah. It is us. And that's a lovely way of putting it, from me to we, or whatever, but also it's actually it goes on and on and on. I haven't plumbed the depth of it by any means, but it's actually
not yet, at least, right?
Not yet. I am the whole thing. I'm just the whole thing. And on every level, it's like my body seems like it's distinct, but it really isn't. How could it be? It relies on the sun and the plants and the air and it's part of a whole ecology, and exists as an embedded part of that. And my soul's the same. The very words we're using we can have this conversation because language is communal, because our experiences are shared. And I suspect we're sharing information on that level of soul all the time. That's what psychic experiences are. We're deeply connected. It's just, it's non-local, because it doesn't exist anywhere, does it? The soul, the mind, the psyche, whatever word you give to that, it isn't in space. It doesn't have a place. It's a nowhere place. And therefore it's non-local. And then this depths of being, which is traditionally in the West called spirit, which means essence, essence from SA to be. It's your being, the being of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It is common, it is arising as everything. So my deepest being and your deepest being is the same being. And it's getting to that. So what I wanted was a word to say, that's, how can we have that both and? So I've coined the phrase a unividual to mean an individual who's conscious of unity. And I think this is the next jump in our evolution. I think it's happening on all sorts of levels. It's happening that we're moving towards being not just individuals, but unividuals. But just because I know I'm going to repeat it, but it's just so important to me. And we get there by becoming more individual, not by being less. And that's back to the nullius in verba. By thinking for ourselves, by being ourselves, we can come to unity, because we free ourselves from the unconscious herd. We free ourselves from the place we've come from and allow in this greater possibility.
Mm. Where's ego fit in all of that?
To me, the whole ego thing is confusion now. I know, I grew up through a lot of ego spirituality, just like everyone else. But I now, the back cover of Deep Awake says the ego is the hero, not the villain of the spiritual journey. For me, the word ego just means I. That's all it means. So originally, I think it made its way in as a translation of various Hindu ideas, and even using the word, I think, came from Freud with his idea of ego in id. But even there, actually, the word ego Freud never used the word. It's a translator who used the Latin to make Freud sound like he was more authoritative. So I think we have a background of confusion as to what this word means. So for me, it's like, look, there is an individual aspect to Tim. And if I become self-centered, you could say it's egotistical. And I get that. And that's something which is dangerous and unpleasant and causes a lot of pain in the world. But the idea that I'm an individual, an ego, is a great thing. It's just imperfect. And there's things about Tim which are growing and lovely and wise, and there's bits that aren't. And that's what it is to be an evolutionary thing. I have to live with my mixed past. So I would like to free us completely from this word, because I think it sets up a war inside where we're fighting ourselves.
Well, there's so many different, it's like you said, there, you've got ego, and then there's egotistical, and and is the person's ego, so large that there's no room for me, in the room with them, kind of thing. And there's all these different expanses and definitions and sizes and shapes and loves and not loves around ego. So I guess you could, if you just dispense the word, like, okay, as of right now, Love Matters podcast, we are exercising the word ego. It's gone, right? Now we just get to be unividuals. So we have a individual.
So I don't want to get rid of the word. Words are words. What I do want to do is get rid of the spiritual theory. That's specifically that. And I want to get rid of the spiritual theory that there is something in you called an ego, which wants to stop you waking up, because it will die if it does. And it's going to do everything. It's going to stop you meditating, and it's just going me, 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 me. Whereas actually what's in us, I suspect, is a lower level of our individuality, which is designed to make us survive. And that works out then on a higher level as a kind of like a self-orientation. If we're not mature enough, we don't go beyond that, and that's ugly. And you see people who are narcissistic, who are very self-orientated, and you could say it's egotistical, and they haven't made this extra jump of maturity.
I love that.
Realizing that it's not about them. It's just that.
That's a much healthier approach.
Yeah, I think so.
Take Tim's. That was good. I like that. So, psyche, spirituality, the evolution as we're going through is, the changing aspect of how we show up in community, in our homes, in our environments as shepherds on this planet. Do you can you see that evolution happening? Can you plot it? Does it look like it's a waveform, like, oh, we're up now and then we're going to recede and then we're going to go up again? Are we, or is this a trajectory that, do you think mankind's?
I don't think it's necessary. I'm not a progressivist in that it's just like up and up and up. It feels like, look, I would say that I'm a historian. I've studied history a great deal. I've written about history a great deal. So I have some understanding of history and human history, let alone deep history of evolution.
Right. Well, I know you've written a lot about it. Your earlier books
Yeah,
were
yeah.
definitely the dive there. So what's happening with our consciousness now? Is this new in your experience? You're looking at history, or are we going through some kind of cycle?
Well, I don't think it's a cycle. I think it's progressive in the sense that it moves forward. I think things can go up and down. We could be heading for a great disaster. We could be heading for something wonderful. I don't think anyone knows. What I can say, and I think pretty authoritatively, is that human beings have done really, really well at alleviating suffering. And we don't recognize it in the modern world because we don't understand history. So most people think things are going badly, whereas actually things are going incredibly well. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not new things on the horizon, global warming, blah, 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 which could really upset the whole thing in a massive way. I'm not, that could happen, and maybe it is happening. But in terms of the things which our ancestors have struggled with, child mortality, terrible disease, plague, short lives, tooth decay, everything, most menial work you can imagine, everyday struggle, hatred between people, violent death, incessant war. We live in paradise.
By comparison, for sure.
Unbelievable. We should wake up every morning and go, thank you, ancestors. How did you get us from that to this? This is so good. So that's the first thing. We don't notice that. And the level of compassion has really exploded exponentially, especially, I think, since the Second World War. I always remember, my dad, when he was 18, was in a tank blowing up other young men who happened to come from a country on the other side of a piece of water. I have never had to do that. How wonderful is that? Because nearly every Englishman in history has had to do that.
Sure.
In one way or another. So I see that. And what I see is that there's this expansion of compassion so that we don't even notice that we've now, the changes that have happened in the relationship, say, between men and women, or which are just unprecedented historically. I mean, just so fast and so big, or between races, where the point where racism, for instance, which would be regarded throughout history as a virtue, you hate your neighbors and you take things from them. That's what you do, and that's basically history.
Right.
And now we don't do that, and it's regarded as a bad thing. And people care genuinely about human beings on the other side of the planet who they'll never meet, who may be in some sort of ecological disaster or war or famine. There's a sense of we are one human race, and that's new and huge. Not everyone, far from.
Still have a lot of work to do, but it is new. See that,
But it's big. But there's a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, there's a real sense growing of connection with the natural world, so that people care about polar bears. The polar bear would tear you to shreds.
Yeah.
But people care. People care. There's interspecies compassion. And then those two are very big. Getting the human thing, that's very big. The animal thing, bigger. Vegetarianism. When I became a vegetarian when I was 17, everyone said I would die. I didn't know a single vegetarian, not one.
Wow.
Now, everywhere. These are huge shifts. And then underneath that, slower, but definitely there, when I started talking about waking up to oneness, everyone thought it was a strange, abstract thing with no relevance. Now people come to me going, "Oh no, I got to oneness," and there's more and more of us. So it is happening. Will it all turn out happily ever after? I hope so, but I don't know that. But that it's happening, yeah. Look, it's happening on a scale which is unprecedented, and we have to, as you said, we have to shepherd that in. We have to bring that love in. It won't happen without us. It happens through us. We are it.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Waking up to oneness. Is this a daily discipline? Is it a mindset? Is it here I am, I'm sitting, surrounding me in my office here are hundreds of books and piles of things that I need to go through because I was out of town for a week, and I have plenty to do. And I have a beloved in my wife, a dog I love, children. And I can get just totally immersed in the doing, right? And I know when I get there that has an impact on my health, on my stress, on all variety of things, but it's still very, pulls us in. So is there a practice, is there something that you do to stay as awake as possible while still doing a lot of the things that you need to do?
Yeah. Oh, such a great question, Larry. All of these things are like really pertinent on the button, because yeah, exactly. Well, the answer is it changes all the time for me. We're each individual. I've had different phases in my life where I've been very disciplined, and then there's been other periods where discipline sounds like back at school or something. I don't know, like someone's going to tell me off. So I'd say for this last period of my life, I take quite a playful approach. Because I don't want to carry a big weight on my back. It's bad enough that I've got a list which is interminably long, as I'm sure yours is. I mean, it's just like it's on my computer here. And as soon as things go from the top, new things come in at the bottom. It's just
I have a list that says read your list.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, perfect. So what I don't want is oh, fuck, wake up, do that meditation. It's like I don't want another thing on my list. Mm-hmm. What I do want is to remember that I'm alive, and that the reason I'm doing this list is because I care. I'm doing this list because I care about my family and I want them to be well. I'm doing this list because I care about my work, because it matters to me, because it feels worth doing. I'm doing this list because I care about Tim and I want him to end his days going, yeah, that was a great life. That was worth doing. And that's why I'm doing it. And so therefore what I'm looking for is to remember how precious life is in some way, and then to come into it. And meditation can do that. So sometimes it's meditation. I love just moving the body, walking. Philosophy does it for me. Questioning does it. So there's a million things which I found fit Tim. And what I encourage people to do is find what fits them and not expect it to be the same thing every day. And keep it playful so it doesn't become like I recently thought I'm going to stop teaching deep awake meditation. And I'm going to start saying, practice on a regular basis deep awake indulgence. Just indulge yourself for at least a few minutes every day in how good it feels just to be. So, like build in a bit of indulgence in your life, so you can just
kind of like
just
that
sit there without doing anything. Just sitting there doing nothing, just indulging, and feel your breath. That's a good way to indulge it. Just breathe, nothing else, and just indulge. Being pretty good. Anyway, let's go. And like that, rather than making a whole thing.
I like that a lot, and I also suspect that all of us have little indulgences that we do all day long, but we don't give ourselves the time to recognize them.
Yes, that's genius, Larry. So how about this? This is a whole new thought. I love this. How about saying to ourselves and to other people, you probably already do this. Just whatever that indulgence is, just call it spiritual.
Oh my gosh.
Just call it a spiritual practice.
Wow. For those that don't have a spiritual practice or don't consider themselves a spiritual being, as of right now, you have now got the way to do it. That's great. I love that. Oh my gosh. I kind of want to indulge for a few moments. No, that's really great. The description, like when you were saying that, I'm going, oh yeah, I stop and I pick up my dog and I just, pet the dog, or we go for a walk, or even just getting up from the desk to walk around and, and breathe a little, right? Breathe a little differently.
Yeah.
Is a tiny form of indulgence. And what came to my mind is how often do we miss those?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's with everything. It's like not missing things.
Yeah.
Being able to catch them and how precious they are.
Yeah. Can you come closer to your mic, please?
Sorry. Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so indulgent. I'm just gonna. It's how there's how precious.
I want you to indulge, but we need to hear you.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, I used to work with people who are dying. I've been around death a lot recently. A lot of my parents, my wife's parents have just died. And
I'm sorry.
it's like, like death is a great one of its great, Goethe is obviously really tough and painful, and also it brings this huge gift. And the gift is remembering you're alive, remembering how precious it is, and that to grab those moments and to really, it's such a shame, this. And that's what you're really talking about, isn't it? You can get into this. The lists are fine, aren't they? If you feel inspired and it's like, great. But if you're this, you miss this. And the bigger thing is always going on. You're always in an infinite universe. You're always in the biggest mystery you can imagine. You're always on this incredible journey of evolution. And anything we can do to support each other too. That's the other thing. Just remind each other in a gentle way. Bring kindness, bring love in. We want to love it. We want to love our lives. At the end of the day, we want to love our lives.
We do. And we're sitting here in this crazy technological information age where there's so much information, and so, it's just constantly the phone, you name it, is there. I don't know if I want to say bombarding, but it's there all the time, right? When you look at technology and you look at this information age and the amount of information that's available, how does that do the dance with our spiritual, our soul evolution?
Wow. Yeah. It feels, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I suffer from the negative side of it like everyone else. And I don't know, you said maybe not bombarded, and I thought, yeah, probably more like enticed. It's like it's like something's just flirting with me the whole time, and sometimes it's too much. I certainly feel that with emails, like the constant communication. So there's a great paradox. So as an author, how lovely. I live in a time where everyone can reach me, and I love that. But also, I reply to everybody, so it's a huge
and then your day is over very quickly, right?
It can be, and I can feel overwhelmed from it, so I have to manage that. And I sometimes I do it well, and sometimes I don't do it well.
Yeah, me too.
So I think what you're asking is, okay, so we're in this evolutionary world. We've had this whole explosion of connection, which is what I think the internet really is, and it's also kind of almost like a physical, or not even physical, really. It's a manifestation of the imagination in a way that we can access it. That I've gone from a world in which I had to, struggle to find information about things I was interested in, where I can get the wisdom of the world within 2 seconds on my phone. That's just I'll Siri and bang, there it'll be. That's an incredible jump. And how do we manage that? That's a great example of wisdom. Okay, so that's in itself is a good thing, but it will have a dark underbelly, and it does. And we need the wisdom then. How do we bring out the best? So we now got this new power. How do we bring out the best in this? How do we do that? And I think I don't really think we know what it is yet, let alone how to do that. But we're looking for how to do that. But if it wasn't this, it'd be something else. And when this is done, it'll be the next thing, and then the next thing. And there's a constant, every time human beings innovate, there's a whole load of people going, this is it, the end of the world, something awful has just happened. And then other people's going, it's going to bring us utopia, it's fantastic. And obviously what actually happens is that something good generally comes into the world. And then we find out that within it, there's something negative. That's the yin and the yang, or whichever way you want to put it, that will turn into the problem we then need to solve. And I do wonder whether the problem what it's pushing us to is looking at our own psyche now, is realizing that really what we need to look at is soul, how we respond to things, how we see who we are, these deeper aspects. So
let's go there.
Okay.
Let's go there, because that is I think that's a huge piece. I think wisdom, that we're achieving a certain degree of wisdom. To me, wisdom is, comes from an experience. You have an experience, you know better how to deal with it. I use the word discernment a lot, and just how to best discern what to work on, what to focus on, what to pay attention to or not, right? But the psyche, this piece that you're speaking to, I think this is extremely important, and I know it's very much what's in this soul story. Take us down that path for a little bit here.
Well, the soul story is I think my most important book, and I'm just going to talk about it in the broadest sense because it's a very detailed.
Yeah, we unfortunately, this is not a 10-part series, but
No,
we would come back and do more. I guarantee you we can.
But the underlying idea of it really is that to understand what this is we're in, and to do that, I think we need to draw on spirituality and science, and that there is a possibility of an underlying narrative which gives meaning and actually real hope as well to the human experience. Too much science takes away our humanity, it reduces it to cause and effect, to atoms, to things which make us feel inconsequential. And spirituality the same. It takes away from the human experience is a punishment. The body is a tomb. We're caught in Maya, where it's an illusion, all this stuff. Actually, I think what we need is a new narrative. And that narrative, for me, is the evolutionary narrative. That for 13.8 billion years, something amazing has been happening. The universe has been coming into existence from nothing, from the simplest of things, like hydrogen. It has turned into you and me having this conversation. That is extraordinary. And once you see that, it puts your individual life in a whole new context. Suddenly, like, wow, I am this 13.8 billion years of evolution now experiencing itself. That's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love the way you put that all those, that entire experience, or that entire history is present now, that it none of it's gone away. Literally all of it comes forward together to be here now, right?
I think it's one of the most important things. I'm so pleased you picked up on it, Larry, because one of the things which gets a bad press in science and spirituality is time. Mm-hmm. Where you constantly, time's an illusion, and people seem to like the idea that time is an illusion. I'm sure I've said it myself. You'll probably find it in my earlier books. But now it feels to me like, really? Time is something amazing. Time is the sequence of experience. Everything I've ever experienced has been time. So what is time? It's right here, right now. And what I notice is that every new moment has two qualities. One is it realizes a new possibility. There's never a moment which is the same as a previous moment. It's always new. So time is the realization of possibilities. That's what it is. That's been going on for 13.8 billion years. It's been realizing new possibilities, and it's been building on what's happened before. Because the other thing I notice about every moment is it contains implicitly within it the past. But the past hasn't gone anywhere. The past doesn't pass. It accumulates. There's more of it. So in this moment here is you making contact with me, us deciding to do this, us learning to speak English, the evolution of the human body, the arising of our solar system, the hydrogen, the Big Bang, everything is in this moment. And if it wasn't, it wouldn't be this moment. So we haven't lost anything. And it means that what's happening with you and me is that everything is made of the past. Everything. And so what you and me are is our past. So I am everything that's ever happened to Tim, and I'm meeting everything that's ever happened to Larry. That's what makes us unique. And here we are meeting. And that everything that's happened is blessing and a curse. And that's the issue, because it lifts us up. And then, of course, the negative stuff holds us back, and we have to transmute it.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because having been coaching people now and working in therapeutic environment for years and years and years, of course, what comes up is that I can't do that because I had this experience. I have PTSD. I was traumatized. I was, I grew up in this environment. And so how could I possibly consider something else? Right. And, there's a part of me that goes, well, wait a second, right now, at this moment in time, isn't it possible? And then there's but this is what happened in my past. And so what do we do, when I hear that everything in the past is present, yet the present has an opportunity to be uniquely an experience of what it is in this moment, right?
Yes.
How do we help people, I think the word you brought up is transmute. Maybe that's the key. Transmute a past experience that is challenging into something that it allows us to use it in a powerful important way in our present.
You look at people, and I'm sure you probably have examples yourself. I know I do, and all the wisest people I know are like this. Is that actually we transmute our wounds into our wisdom, the thing which is holding us back, and the thing which can take us forward. And it's not that it never happened. It did happen, and it's still there in the past. It's not there in the present. It's there. But the past is implicit in the present, but it's in the past. But
that can get really confusing for a lot of people, right? It's not happening now, yet who you are now is the amalgamation of all those things that.
Look. Tim as a 5-year-old boy is not happening now, but Tim as a 5-year-old boy is implicit in Tim as a 60-year-old man.
Got it.
Those haven't. But Tim doesn't have to behave like a 5-year-old boy now,
unless you want to.
Unless I want to. Right. And the same with everything. It's seeing that the present always builds on what's gone before. So if there's some part that most of the past is I call it passivity in the book, like a weight. The past is like a weight. It forms the habits of existence. It's done that with nature. The so-called laws of nature are the habits of nature. Everything is doing this, repeating the past. And mostly it's good. It's like I can make these funny noises with my mouth and you know what they mean because we have the habit of knowing that these sounds signify certain ideas. I speak in this accent, you speak in that accent because of where we grew up. And that is a habit that we have. Most of those habits are good. This has the habit of falling, and that means I can predict where it will fall. But then other habits that we've got into, especially in the psyche, in the soul, they don't help us. They're traumatic experiences. They're in our way. They're stopping us realizing the deepest potentials we could. And then we need to transmute them. We need to see them in a bigger story. Find some wisdom in the middle of the pain. Find some way of turning it around so we can actually go beyond them. And then we set up a new habit. And then that's no longer the dominant habit. We don't have to respond in that. I don't have to, whenever you say a certain word, be very angry because of something that happened to me when I was younger. I can actually go, no, I used to be like that. That's there in my past. But now
do you think a lot of the past experiences, many people that believe that many of the past experiences are held in our body, right? That there's muscle memory, there's spiny dendrites that are developed that hold on to certain things from the past. And then there's just belief systems, right? So
my guess would be, Larry, and I'm really moving out of an area of expertise for me here. So, I mean, even more than normal. But but my guess is that nothing is held in the body, neither those, or even memories. I suspect that what's happening is that the body, like everything, is in the moment is existing in relationship to what's happened before, the pre-existent, the akisha, as you'd call it in India, the memory of nature. It's not memory though; it's actually the past. So that when we remember, we're referencing in the present something which happened in the past. And the same with the body. So the body is referencing the past. So I have these movements because in the past I've had these movements and they replicate them. So if I've had a traumatic experience, then you might be able to reproduce it or contact it again because it was traumatic around my shoulder and therefore it's like that connects me with it. Now, whether it's right to say it's held in there in some way, same with memories. I don't know, we struggle with memories because it's like, how can they be held in the brain and what would that mean? But I suspect what they're doing is referencing the past. Same with DNA. I suspect that's why the DNA code is actually so simple and it should be so complicated. It's because really it's a reference. It's referring. It's actually more like a radio in that respect. It's connecting to something other than itself. And what it's connecting to is everything that's ever happened. And that everything is doing that. So I think these things work because of that.
Gosh, I have a long list of questions, Tim. One of the questions I want to ask, and it's just, I guess this is, it's a personal little quip of my own, is this idea of channeling information. So if as unividuals, right, we have our individuality, we also have our connection to the universe, the essence at large, right? Would it imply that all the information, known and unknown, is accessible to us at any given point in time, as long as we could kind of, you know, get rid of whatever barrier is in the way of experiencing or knowing it?
I suspect it's not to do with barriers. It's to do with ability, maybe a better word. There's one view which goes, it's already there, we're already connected, there's something in between us which is stopping us.
Mm-hmm. Which is what I kind of just said.
Yeah. So my feeling is, it's more like all the information is there, well, everything is, and that just like the whole universe is there, but my ability to see it depends on how evolved my eye is. I get to see this much of the spectrum, which is actually gigantic, but I see this tiny bit because that's the nature of my eye. And so my understanding will also connect me, or my awakeness, the quality of my soul will connect me to what bits of those information that I'm able to. So it's, rather than it being already, we're growing into that, which is why when we evolve, so, you know, in my own little way, a huge amount of what I do when I was writing Soul Story kind of has similarities, like most creativity does actually, to what you could call channeling. You know, I'm walking around, I drop questions off into the big mind, and I wait, and then things come, and some of what comes is rubbish, and some of it comes is really good, and then you follow the good stuff, and then when it doesn't work, you look for something better. And there's my ability. It almost feels like I'm tuning it. Is it there? And that's my ability to find it, I think, more than something which is in the way.
Sounds like fine tuning in a way.
Yeah, like everything, like we're doing it. I think we're doing it now. Mm-hmm. We're tuning up how we conceptualize of this strange experience called life we're having, and every time we improve it, we go, "Oh, I'm experiencing a little bit more," or I can go to another area I couldn't go to before. I see that in a new way. Now I see it in a new way. Oh, it's changed my experience of reality. It's actually changed reality itself in some way by perceiving it in a new way. So I think I see it more like that.
I like that. So we're almost at the top of the hour, and there's a, gosh, you know, I have this envision of there's been times in your life where you probably have looked at just kind of your environment and want to step outside the door and just go, wake up, right? Wake up. And and we
just with expletives.
Okay, so I didn't want to put too many words in your mouth. So, you know, here we are, we're a podcast. This is an opportunity for people around the world to get little bits of wisdom or big pieces of wisdom. And so in closing and our pulling it together, I'd really love you to be able to tell people where they can find more of you. Other than, you know, if you just Google search Tim Freke, you'll find a lot. I love watching the various interviews you've done and the presentations, and of course your books. But if there's any specific place that you would like people to look for you where they could come see you and experience you, I'd like to know about that. But, you know, what would you say to this listening audience, viewing and listening audience, that would be a wake up piece? You know, what's
so you can find, I've got a strange name. As long as you Google it, Freke, you'll find Tim Freke, you'll find me. My website, which is just timfreke.com, has loads of videos. My YouTube channel is getting bigger and bigger all the time. It's a great place. If you sign up for my newsletter, about once a week, I send out another video or some interesting thing we're doing. I also come to the States. I haven't got no plans at the moment because I'm stopping to write, but I will.
But we're going to create one.
There you go. We're going to create one.
San Diego, here he comes, right?
Yeah. So hopefully that will happen. I'm doing a retreat in New Year, which is an amazing time to do a retreat because it's just such a celebration of living. And you can also find out about the ICU, the International Community of Unividuals, which is an international community. We meet up online, and it's a way of helping each other develop our unividuality, our sense of connection with each other, with the world, and how we bring this love into the world. So there's lots and lots of stuff out there. Most of it's completely free, and I just please And feel free to contact me, because I want to be able to share this stuff. Also, the books Deep Awake, if you're interested in the waking up, Soul Story, if you're interested in the philosophy, I would recommend. Those are my latest two.
Mm-hmm.
The wake up. Yeah, I do, Larry. I do. Of course I do. Of course I do. And it astonishes me both how much we've awoken during my lifetime and how little. And I'm impatient and by nature quite passionate, and I want us to. And I think there's imperatives too, like what's happening with the environment, and we need to wake up. That's also part of the story. But what I want to say is actually much softer. What I want to say is, when I wrote Soul Story, which is a pretty heavy duty, easy, I hope to read, but deep philosophy book, at a certain point I had to confess that all of this philosophy that I was writing really was a way of shoring up intellectually, making credible some very childlike intuitions that arise for me in the deep awake state. When I do this from when I was a kid, the intuition, and it's so strong in me, and it sounds so naive and childish, but it's the deepest thing I know. So it feels like that's the deepest message I want people to hear, and for us to remember. And you can say it in a million ways, but the phrase that came to me was that life, despite everything, God knows there's so much suffering, but despite all of that, in some profound way, life is essentially good. And death is actually safe. And what really, really matters is love. That's the key to know that, and to take that in, and to live our lives in relationship and as a way of expressing that love.
I love that. Thank you for that. What a great way to close the Love Matters podcast. Had that been planned, I would have said perfect. Knowing it wasn't planned, it's ultimately perfect. Thank you, Tim. I so appreciate you. He is accessible because there are so many people that are coming onto the show that we have to really go after and work at them to find time, and you were very accessible, surprisingly so, and I appreciate that. And I hope that you can continue to remain that way, but still have time for your life and your joys and your family and so on, because it's beautiful. It's becoming, that's happening less and less these days with people, especially with popularity. And to me, I see you as a very popular person on this planet. So I thank you for your time and for the conversation. Hopefully we'll get you to San Diego, and I got a feeling that we're going to be back talking some more in the future, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been a real delight, Larry. I've loved it.
Awesome.